RGE here with another video for MMOattack.com. Big thanks to those guys. Without them, I wouldn't be able to make this video because I wouldn't have a beta key. The game that I'm going to be taking a look at here is SMITE. SMITE is the new MOBA being released by Hi-Rez, which is the company that released the new Tribes game. And the new Tribes game is pretty great, so you should definitely check that out if you haven't played it yet. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is the god selection. Currently, the god selection is done in this bar that displays 6 avatars of gods, but it doesn't really display any information about the gods. You have to right-click on them to get like a more detailed explanation about them. What I would like to see is possibly like a large grid, similar to the way that it's done in League, and when you mouse over them, you can get some information like this character's a tank, and this character should buy these items, or this is what their abilities are. It would just be nice to get some more information about them and be able to see all of the gods at once, or at least a really large amount of them at once, because in the current system, I think once the game starts to get like 30 to 40 characters, it'll be silly to navigate through a bar. So I'd like to see kind of the god selection screen overhauled, really. Now, there's a good chance that the reason why it's in the state that it's in currently is just because the game's in early beta, and they wanted to focus on the gameplay and getting the game working so that people could play it. But before this game gets released, I really feel like that screen needs to be changed. What makes SMITE different than a traditional MOBA is that this game is actually in a third-person fixed perspective, so your camera is actually mounted behind your character instead of in a top-down perspective like League or DotA. And it changes some of the mechanics that you would normally see in a traditional MOBA. In a traditional MOBA, a lot of the time you'll select your target, and that will be kind of how you attack them. In this, you actually have to aim. Like, you have to center them up on your screen like a crosshair and attack them. And you don't really have... You have an auto attack, but it's triggered by holding down the mouse button to attack, kind of like shooting in an FPS. Also, it changes how you want to engage your opponents. A lot of the time in a traditional MOBA, you attempt to engage by cutting off your opponent's escape route, which sometimes is the direction in which their tower is located. In this, you want to come up behind them, like behind the way that they are facing. If they're facing their tower, you don't want to come from where their tower is, because they can attack you, and they can, more importantly, see you, so they can react to you. They could escape because they know that you're coming from that direction. If you come up from behind them, they can't see you, so you can attack them and get a bunch of free damage in before they can even attempt to escape. So it sort of changes how you want to engage your opponents. It's an interesting twist. One of the great things that this game has is that you can jump into this game as a new player and not really worry about figuring out and learning specific champions. Not necessarily learning them, but learning the builds for them. The order in which you level abilities and the order in which you buy items. You can focus on really learning how the game plays and learning the mechanics of each character, at least until you get to level 6. This game has a leveling system similar to summoner levels in League, and up to level 6, you have the option to have auto-level skills and auto-buy items on. Now, the builds that they use aren't the optimal builds, but they're pretty good. They're reasonable. They're viable. So, as a new player, you can really jump into this game and just start learning how to play it versus learning all the builds. Because that's probably one of the most daunting parts of really any MOBA. And the community in most MOBAs is pretty notorious for being terrible people who will basically rage at you purely because you don't know the builds. And so it's nice that you kind of have that handicap. It's something that really any MOBA should have. Now, once you get to level 6, though, the handicap is taken away from you. It's turned off, and you can't turn it back on, to my knowledge. So, it's nice that the game kind of lets you ease into it, really lets you learn how to play. One of the things that this game does really great, actually, is how it handles gold and experience gain. So, all enemies who die in range of you provide you with gold and experience. You get slightly more for last hitting a minion than you do if you're just there when it dies. But what it does is that it makes the players really aggressive. People go for those early game kills instead of just farming like you would in League or Dota. And so it just makes the game a little more faster paced, really. It's nice. I like that. Also, the jungle is handled differently. This isn't something that is like does great or something that it does poorly. This is just kind of a note about how jungling works in this game. So currently it doesn't provide enough gold or experience to make you viable in the game if you just jungle. And the person who's in lane doesn't gain enough extra experience from you not being there for it to be worth you jungling. Now, what you do use the jungle for, though, is getting buffs. The buffs that are available in the jungle are really strong and will win you fights. So, the jungle's just handled a little differently than it is in League. It's not something that's great, but it's not a bad thing either. It's just different. The towers in SMITE can really easily be pushed over with a single minion wave, just because the towers have such a little health, and they seem to take a lot of damage from minions. Not necessarily from gods. Now, that might be just because I play Ymir, mostly, and he's a tank. Maybe the actual DPS characters do a ton of damage to towers, I don't know. So, that's a possibility. But because they have such little health, it makes it so that you can't really hide under your tower, and so it forces players to be really aggressive the entire game and try to keep their lane pushed towards the enemy tower, because it'll go down easy enough. There's actually two types of towers in this. You have your regular towers in the lane, and then you have the Phoenix Tower. And the Phoenix Tower kind of is a tower and inhibitor, like the inhibitor in League or the barracks is in Dota. And when you kill the Phoenix, your team's minions get flame weapons permanently. Now, like League, the Phoenix Tower can like be reborn, and it will basically it respawns, but your team keeps the buff. Your minions keep the flame weapon buff. Instead of having a building at the end, like in the enemy base or even your base, you have a Minotaur. Now, the Minotaur is kind of like this big badass creature with a huge axe. I'm pretty sure he has an axe. It might be a hammer. Doesn't really matter. He's got a big weapon, and he attacks. Once the enemy team's Minotaur is dead, I mean, you win. That's the goal. You want to kill him. But he will attack the enemy team. He smashes them. Does a lot of damage to gods. One of my complaints about the Minotaur, though, is that he feels really weak against minions. The minions in this game just seem to do so much damage to the structures. Like, they do a lot of damage to towers, they do a lot of damage to the Minotaur, but they don't seem to do much damage to gods. But then, on the other hand, gods don't seem to do a lot of damage to towers, and they don't seem to do a lot of damage to the Minotaur. Maybe I just haven't been playing the right characters, but I'd like to see the Minotaur just be a little stronger against the minions. Overall, though, I mean, he's pretty cool. I like him. It's refreshing. This game just does a lot of things where, like, it tweaks the concepts that you have in traditional MOBAs, and it makes it just feel fresh and fun. I guess it's time to talk about the two things that can be a big issue for this game. One of them is the balance. Some of the gods, like Artemis, for example, can get really out of control if they get an early game kill. If they get like a kill in the first minute, then they're just going to become too strong to beat them in the lane, and you should better hope that you have another lane that is just as out of control as the one that you're going to be playing against. A lot of the gods snowball just completely out of control based on getting a couple early game kills, just like Artemis. And then some of them are just straight up OP. It's gonna be an issue just because, or well, it can be an issue. Hopefully Hi-Rez gets better at balance, because in Tribes they've had issues with their balance when they release a new weapon pack. Almost every time, one of the weapons is just OP as hell. And in a MOBA, that can completely kill the game. Hopefully they can get better at just releasing balanced content. If they can, I mean, the game should be good. I guess the last thing that needs to be talked about is the cash shop. Currently, the cash shop has gods and skins in it. No boosts, which is actually not a bad thing. Boosts tend to break the progression. Not necessarily like you've unlocked more stuff so you can compete at a higher level. More like you aren't good enough to compete at a higher level yet. Why are you level 30? So, it's not necessarily bad that they don't have boosts. They really shouldn't have them. However, the skins that they currently have available are bad. And if they can't release any kind of... if they can't release good skins consistently, then that will be an issue, basically, for them, because they won't make a lot of money. Now, in comparison to League, or On, or Dota, just because of the way that the camera's set up in this game, you need really good models and textures for your skins. You don't necessarily need that in League, or really any other MOBA. Just because of how far away you are from your character, you can use pretty low-res textures. And your models don't have to be particularly good either. In this game, they need to produce just really high-quality content, in comparison, at least, to other MOBAs. They might have issues populating the store with enough really good content to make money. Hopefully they can start putting out some good skins. I mean, it's too early to say that they're not going to put out good skins, but from the few that are available now, they're pretty bad. I wouldn't necessarily say that they should be focusing on putting good skins in the store right now, because they're in the testing phase. It's in beta, and it's in a fairly early version of beta, at least to my understanding. So it's too early to say that it's going to be an issue, but it could be an issue. For this game to last, they're going to have to release content that is better balanced, and they're going to have to start releasing good skins, and they're going to have to do it consistently. I mean, currently, even with the balance issues, the game's pretty fun, but MOBAs tend to be competitive, and this game isn't particularly competitive as a result of the balance issues. Hopefully Hi-Rez can just get better at updating with balanced content. If you want a key, I'll actually link to where you can register for the beta for this game in the description below. So head over to SMITE site if you want beta keys. I highly suggest actually signing up for the beta for this. It's pretty fun. Also, once again, big thanks to MMOattack.com for getting me my key. You should head over there. They usually are giving out keys to stuff. I know right now there's like 800 Ghost Recon Online keys available, if that's something you're interested in. So, head over to their site. They release some pretty good content, including my content. And if you happen to be watching this on the MMO Attack YouTube channel, and you want more videos from me, then check out my channel, at youtube.com/geartable. I'll put up a little thing with a URL that goes to my channel, or at least lists it. Then you can know what the hell I'm talking about. Or maybe they'll put it in the description or something this time. I don't know.
Slain an enemy. Double kill.